iCafe Latte, our roundtable discussion featuring our distinguished guests.
Okay, so 2 Chronicles chapter 1, King James Version. And Solomon, the son of David, was strengthened in his kingdom, and the Lord his God was with him and magnified him greatly. And then Solomon spake unto all Israel, to the captains of thousands and of hundreds, and to the judges, and to every governor in all Israel, the chief of the fathers. So Solomon and all the congregation with him went to the high place that was at Gibeon, for there was the tabernacle of the congregation of God, which Moses the servant of the Lord had made in the wilderness. Verse 7 says, In that night did God appear unto Solomon, and said unto him, Ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said unto God, Thou hast showed great mercy unto David my father, and hast made me to reign in his stead. Now, O Lord God, let thy promise unto David my father be established, for thou hast made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in multitude. Give me now wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before this people. For who can judge this thy people that is so great? And God said to Solomon, Because this was in thine heart, and thou hast not asked riches, wealth, or honor, nor the life of thine enemies, neither yet hast asked long life, but hast asked wisdom and knowledge for thyself, that thou mayest judge my people over whom I have made thee king. Wisdom and knowledge is granted unto thee, and I will give thee riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings have had that have been before thee, neither shall there be any after thee have the like. And chapter 2 tells me, and Solomon determined to build a house for the name of the Lord, and an house for his kingdom. And Solomon told out 70,000 men to bear burdens, and 80,000 to hew in the mountain, 3,600 to oversee them. So he begins by asking wisdom. Why would he ask wisdom? Why do you think he would ask wisdom? Is it really about not knowing what to do? I mean, surely his father was the king, and his father would have shown him he wouldn't fail as a king. So I mean, his father would have ensured that he knew everything that he needed to know. It's an unusual prayer because nobody else, no other kings have really asked for wisdom. What do you think?
I feel like without knowledge, even if you have someone to instruct you on how to do something, you could still mess up. With your own knowledge, you can rely on how to make the best decisions based on the information given to you. I feel like that was like a basic tool that he would have needed, and it was smart on his part to ask that.
So he never assumed that he knew it all.
Right.
Or that he had everything that he needed to.
Right.
To accomplish what he needed to accomplish. What do you think?
The question I have is, how old was he? I don't know how old he was.
I'm not really sure. I mean, there is no...
Because that may play a factor in his prayer. Because if he's a pretty young person, then he probably has some exposure, but not enough information.
It is.
As a king.
Well, we've seen all the portrayals have basically shown him as being the youngest. So he was portrayed as younger.
That probably would explain part of his prayer for wisdom.
Okay. But then, all right, for a young man to seek wisdom, obviously his father did something right for him to seek wisdom. We see, well, we can assume that his father did something right because when you read through Proverbs, he constantly talks about the training of his father and the importance of seeking wisdom. Wisdom, I mean, back in those days, and I'm sure in contemporary society like today, when a ruler is going to make a decision, basically, you don't second guess. The ruler's decision is the ruler's decision. You respect that. So even as a young man, he could have still just, well, I'm the king, and I'm going to make my decision. And if you don't like my decision, well, go, or I'm going to have you killed, or something like that. They were kings like that. But he never. It just showed you his mindset was different, right? And you mentioned his age. True, the age could have been a factor, but then he also realized that no matter where you are and what you've got behind you, you never know it all. You never know it all. Mm-hmm. That's why life is always an ongoing process of learning. And I think this is remarkable. This is really remarkable. But I think I also wanted to emphasize, so it says here in chapter 2 that he determined to build a house for the name of the Lord. What did he do next?
He acquired workers.
He acquired workers. But before he could even, what would be the mindset of even acquiring workers? Why acquire workers? Why even, I'm sure something happened before he decided that he needed to acquire workers. So he got wisdom from God. And I remember we discussed where Jesus said, well, anybody who's trying to build a house must
Count the cost.
So I honestly believe that he sat down. He said, well, we're going to build a house.
Like create a plan.
Exactly. Would you agree? I tend to believe that there was some planning. Before we even got to this part right here of his determination to build a house, and how many men, 70,000 men to bear burdens, how did they know they were going to need that many? Do you get it? And to hew in the mountains, so they basically knew they were going to need 70,000 men to bear burdens and 70,000 to hew out in the mountains. So they needed men to carry the stuff, and then they needed men to go into the mountain to work in the mountains, right? And it says 3,600 to oversee them, supervisors. He knew, but before he got to all of that, once again, there was, in my opinion, planning. There had to have been.
In fact, there had to be a drawing of the proposed building.
Exactly. So there had to have been some sort of blueprint laid out. What we're seeing right here is he didn't just, okay, I got wisdom now. We're going to build a house. Let me just go build a house. I believe that because he got wisdom, and probably even before that, they knew that anything that they were going to undertake, and bear in mind that at the point of building the temple, that house for the Lord, there had been nothing like that in Israel before. Because the verse talked about the ark of the God of David, which was brought up from Kirjath Jearim to the place which David had prepared for it, for he had pitched a tent for it at Jerusalem, which means there was no physical house for the ark. There was nothing but just a tent. So when Solomon determined that that a house needed to be built for the ark, a permanent house, it was something that had never been done before. And even if you remember, when they were given the instructions concerning the building of the tent for where the ark was, did they just randomly build a tent?
It had to be strategically planned to make sure everything worked out.
Do you recall some of the stuff that they were asked to bring for that tent? Do you remember? Gold. The tent was, it was no ordinary tent. It was lined with gold, and it had a specific color about it. So it was just not an ordinary tent. The Ark of the Covenant was in a fancy tent, right? Lined with gold, and it was a specific color and made of the wood. The wood frame was a specific kind of wood that they were told to go out and get. So it was not just a tent. It was a very special tent. Even that little tent, that little temporary structure right there, at the time when they built it, they never considered it temporary because God required the very best for it, right? So the people came and they gave up their gold and they gave up their silver and they brought all that they could bring to it, and it was built. Okay, even that, I believe, required some measure of planning. I really do. Wouldn't y'all agree?
Yeah.
So it shows me, when it comes to life in general, what does it tell you about life in general? We speak to the bigger picture now of life.
To plan things out, you have to plan when you go out to do something. You can't just up and decide you want to set out on a mission for something. You have to know what you want. You have to like it said, you have to count the costs.
Yeah.
You have to have your own kind of blueprint, like an agenda.
Right.
And consider what resources you need, and then you can go.
Exactly. Will you concur?
I totally agree. That applies to school, it applies to families, it applies to the home, it applies to a job.
Right.
Because you can't just say, oh, I need a job. You have to come up with a plan. You have to interview, you have to send out resume, you have to put in applications. So it's same thing with anything in life. There has to be a plan. It has to be something that is orchestrated. There has to be some pre-planning before the plan is activated.
Right. Absolutely true. I agree. And so anything that I believe that we would dream of undertaking for 2013, people are going to make their New Year's resolution. But if you make your New Year's resolution, have you made a plan for the resolution? Some of the New Year's resolution that people make,
lose weight.
People say lose weight, right? But okay, what does losing weight consist of?
You need an exercise routine.
A routine of exercise, a routine of proper diet. And it's going to be some times when you don't follow the plan, but then it has to be, you have to get back on the wagon. If you fall off, you have to get back on.
That's right. So, New Year's resolutions, weight loss.
Be a better person.
Yeah, work on personal, like maybe personality thing. Maybe family, work on things with family, because, some people are a bit distant and they want to improve those relationships, but that also requires a plan. You can't just walk up to the person and be like, what's up? Especially if you've wronged them, you have to come to them and, fix what's wrong, resolve things before you can improve a relationship.
Yeah. So, as we see 2012 come to an end, and as we edge over into 2013, to make anything different happen for 2013, the purpose of all of this reading right here tells us that there has to be planning. There has to be planning. There has to be planning. It's not about wishful thinking. I mean, we can pray.
We can fast.
We can fast.
Faith without works is dead.
It's dead.
You have to have that action plan. You plan it, you prepare, but then you have to activate it. It has to be done.
That's right. Would y'all
Just
agree?
like Nike says, just do it.
Just do it, right? So, I mean, one of the problems that we've seen, one of my personal critiques of religiosity and spiritual things is just pray. Well, it's not enough. I mean, we've got to plan. You have to plan. These things are not going to happen unless you plan. That's why Jesus said you have to count the cost. And, who's going to build without counting the cost to see if he really has what it takes? It's bigger than that, though. It's life in general.
And sometimes it's not only just planning and activating it. Sometimes you might need outside help or resources in certain situations. Because if you have a certain condition you're dealing with, physical or mental ailment or disease, you can plan all you want. But unless you incorporate the resources of a physician or a doctor or the people who have the ability to help you, it does not serve any purpose.
Right. Would you agree? It's not just planning and laying out. Then you have to act on that, and you have to get the people together there who can really help you to make it come to pass. So you say you want to lose weight, then what are you going to do? How are you going to change the way you eat? How are you going to change your consumption of excessive sugar? Do you join a gym? If you can't join a gym, what else can you do? I mean,
or is it a medical problem? Because some people with thyroid problems do have weight problems. And if you just exercise and eat right, you still keep the weight because it's a hormone imbalance.
Right.
However, if you go to the proper physician or medical care is received, then it helps you to figure out what are you doing or what medication or what help can you get to help you to bring your weight down and keep it down to a healthy living standard.
Again, the bigger picture is we're talking about planning, right? And executing change. So, as we close out this discussion, what we want to throw out there is just the whole concept of if you want something to change for 2013, well, I like what Solomon did. The first thing he did was he asked for wisdom.
You got to first believe that it can change.
You got to believe that it can change.
It has to be that.
And he consulted a higher power because he realized that he couldn't do it by himself. And again, like as I said before, he was the son of the king. I mean, he can't do anything wrong. He could ride on the reputation of his father, and he couldn't have been accused of doing anything wrong. He could have made the biggest mistakes in the kingdom, and they still wouldn't have thought that he would have made a mistake. But the first thing he did was he sought wisdom. How do I do this? How do I lose the weight for 2013? How do I improve things for 2013?
How do I make better grades?
How do I make better grades, as a student? How do I improve this in my life? These are the questions. This is what he asked. And then he consulted with the source that he believed could help him. And then after he'd done that, then he went on and got the resources together. He put all the planning into action.
He had to do some research.
He did his research, and he put from the research all of that into action, and he had it done. And the rest of the record that we've read here in 2 Chronicles chapter 2 tells me that he was successful in building this temple. And it was an awesome temple to see. Y'all agree?
Yeah, just like he said in Ecclesiastic, there's
Yeah.
a time for everything.
Right.
You have to believe, you have to practice, you have to research, and you have to act on your belief.
You have to act in your belief. Any closing thoughts?
It also requires dedication and perseverance. You can plan all you want, but if you don't have the heart to keep up when you get tired,
Yeah.
the whole thing will fall apart.
Discipline.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly what you need.
Okay.
And that's also where wisdom comes in, because sometimes, we tire and we need help, so you can't be afraid to ask for help
Yeah.
in times like that.
Good.
You have been listening to iCafe Latte. Please join us again next time.